Well, the American author Philip Roth has died at the age of 85. The Pulitzer National Book Award and Man Booker International Prize-winning novelist wrote about the complexities of being Jewish and American. Many of his works were controversial, including his 1969 novel Portnoy's Complaint, which was censored in Australia for its sexually explicit nature, as you can see in this ABC News clip from that year.
Well, today has been Police Crackdown Day on the book Portnoy's Complaint in Sydney. Police have raided at least 3 bookshops, including Angus and Robertson's. This was the scene when they raided the Third World bookshop, owned by well-known Sydney radical Mr Bob Gould.
You've got a storeroom here, sir? Come and show me.
Officer, I'm from the ABC News. What do you intend to do with these books you've
No comment at this stage, sir, if you don't mind.
Mr Thorburn, I believe the police have been here this morning.
Yes, that is correct.
What did they do when they came?
They were very nice about it. Thank you very much.
Body by selling this book?
I don't think so, whatever depraved might mean.
Do you think you're doing any harm at all by selling it?
I don't think so.
Did the police indicate whether they'll be taking any action against you?
They merely said that they were not censors, they were policemen doing a job, and I would receive a summons later.
Yes, dangerous books. Bram Presser is a Melbourne-based writer and criminal lawyer and fan of Philip Roth. His debut novel, The Book of Dirt, won 3 of the 12 categories in the New South Wales Premier's Literary Awards earlier this month, and he joins me now. Congratulations, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Done. It's not bad, is it? To pick up
I can't complain. No, that was a pretty decent haul.
But just looking at that clip there and the issue of censorship and creating outrage, and looking back at that time, how do you feel when you look at that clip now?
It's quite hilarious. Like, I mean, Portnoy's Complaint is really now an American classic, and we wouldn't even think twice about what it was that offended.
But it was different times, of
well,
course,
different times, but and that was all about sexual morality. And I don't think the censors would look too keenly on a book that was essentially about masturbating.
But there was so much to the book, and it outraged on so many levels.
Absolutely.
Here we focused, in Australia, we were focusing on the sexually explicit nature, but in the United States, he was getting a lot of criticism as well for the way he approached Jewishness.
Yes, I mean, look, he really, I suppose, defined what being Jewish and American was in the post-war era.
Even when he was rejecting what being
absolutely.
Jewish and American was.
And the thing, Portnoy is the perfect example. Portnoy, Alexander Portnoy, is a character who is like bristling against the confines of that kind of rigid Jewish identity by, desperately trying to have sex with anything he can, essentially. Including a piece of liver, which is the scene that everyone always refers to.
But this idea, and you think when he's writing this as well, that Jewishness is still so infused with the Holocaust and these things that he is pushing against. What was the response from Jewish people at the time?
Well, he was absolutely lambasted for what he was writing, and it wasn't even just Portnoy's. Even before that, he was Goodbye Columbus already. His first book won the National Book Award, and it was there were panels of Jewish scholars there's a famous story of it in one of the yeshivas in New York. I think it was Yeshiva College, and he was there to speak, and they were just absolutely slamming him for this desecration of the kind of the holy Jewish identity. The idea that Jews might be something other than highly dignified and proper,
observant,
was
reverential.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
and he was greatly. I'm not going to say hated, but he was damned almost by those who were the arbiters of what Jewishness was at the time.
Taking on this idea of guilt too, wasn't it?
Yes,
particularly in Portnoy's.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, that is the essence of the well, I will say the Jewish, but the Jewish American character, guilt, and particularly post-war. And as we're kind of moving to a more kind of modern society where you do start kind of bucking against the kind of classic confines, and there is the guilt of you still, as a nice Jewish boy, don't want to disappoint your parents, but you also want to engage meaningfully with the world. And Portnoy was the classic example of that. Of he wanted to be a free-thinking. I mean, the book was 1969. He wanted to be a free-thinking young person of the era, and that we're talking the free love time and what have you. But that was a crushing disappointment to his parents. The rejection of both Judaism and the things that you would expect from a young Jewish person, after World War II. Yeah, I mean that was what that book was. It was really about how you negotiate guilt in a.
All of his work was about the question of identity, wasn't it? The question of being an American. He didn't necessarily see himself as a Jewish writer or an American writer. He was bristling against all of this, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. I mean, he really was trying to get to the essence of what it was to be. And that you have so many kind of identifiers in who you are, and so he was writing about being Jewish, about being a man. That was actually, to him, that was a really major thing, and it's something that carried through. It's interesting that, like, Portnoy's talked about essentially a teenager, but you go however many years later to like the humbling
characters,
and
didn't he? Following different characters through different books.
And you found them again essentially struggling with exactly the same issues at different stages
who were often
of
seen
life.
as extension of himself. He was writing about himself through these other characters.
He actually, he really kind of almost expressed offence at the idea that when people suggested he was being autobiographical or that these were just him. He said something to the effect of, I play off my own life, but it's really just the springboard, and he almost took it as an insult to his abilities as a writer.
To say that it's autobiographical.
Exactly.
But it was reflecting something. How are you influenced by that now? I mean, when in the Book of Dirt, you took on the big subject. You took on the Holocaust, but you were questioning identity. You were questioning historical narrative. Why do people have to be reverential to historical narrative? You were trying to give agency to individuals who are doing things, despite the forces of history around them.
Well, yeah. Look, I think it's hard to have to grow up as a Jew in a kind of modern Western society and be a lover of literature without being deeply affected by Philip Roth. And I think he really kind of taught me that you can question your identity. You can do it in a way that might even offend some people, but the importance of what you're doing as a writer is to pick back out the complexities, right? That we simplify our identities, we simplify history, because especially as we move further away, it just gets easier to put it in a nice box and remember it that way. But now, as a writer, you need to take it out. You need to pick the pieces back out, and that might be quite confronting to yourself, and you have to be willing to go there. And I think, there's almost a boldness about Philip Roth that was, stood as a great example to anyone who wants to write about, and particularly modern Jewish life.
And that's the essence of writing, isn't it? Is to find where the grit is, and to be able to go and to approach that with the courage that someone like him displayed. There's so much more we could have talked about. He wrote about America, he wrote about 9/11, he wrote about America's place in the world and terrorism. Absolutely. There's so much we could have talked about.
He almost actually foresaw what we're currently seeing with Trump.
Indeed he did. Look, terrific to talk to you, Bram.
Thanks for having me.
Congratulations again on your book.
Thank you very much.